Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to Emergency Management Associates. We're coming to you from the Area Command, 392 miles west of Kitty Hawk Beach, North Carolina. I want to welcome everybody to our show tonight. Dennis N., yes, it is possibly an emergency at this point in time. I would not come on the air early. However, I think I'm going to start coming on the air every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. However, the information I have for you constitutes a possible emergency very soon. I'm going to be straight up with you. Everything that we talked about up until now about Cascadia is exactly 100% the truth. I'm not going to mince words here. It's exactly 100% true. What we're going to see very shortly will become an emergency in the Cascadia area, up and down the entire West Coast from southern British Columbia, Canada, all the way down into Northern California. Folks, this is something that you need to tell all of your friends about. This is something that you need to share, quite frankly, with everybody you know. I'm not going to mince words here. I'm not going to mince words at all. Okay? I want to make that very clear. I believe what we're facing in the Cascadia region constitutes a possible emergency very soon. I'm going to talk to you about it. I'm going to outline it point by point so there is no mistaking what I'm talking about. I want everybody to understand that. I'm going to outline it point by point so you know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't want any misinterpretation. Also, I will stop whenever I see a question here in the chat. That's how serious I am. I will answer any and all questions as they come up. So, folks, if you have a question, be sure to put it here in the chat. I will stop and answer any questions as I will constantly try to monitor the chat here today. That's how important this is. Also, I've noticed that YouTube has unsubscribed about 10 people. YouTube has unsubscribed about 10 people. Check and make sure your subscriptions are still here to Emergency Management Associates. When you advise your friends, your relatives, your neighbors, the people you socialize with on social media, and when you also advise the people you work with, ask them to also subscribe to this channel. It's imperative that they get this kind of information. I'm going to be putting up this kind of information all the time. I'm going to put up this information and share it with you all the time. That's how sure I am that this is going to happen. Now, one of my friends over in Oregon said that she keeps checking the information saying whether the volcanoes are ready to erupt or not. She said that Cascadia people are saying that Mount Rainier and Mount Hood, Sisters volcanoes, and there's 3 volcanoes in the Sisters complex. There are 3 volcanoes in the Sisters complex. Newberry Volcano, Bachelor Volcano, the husband, the wife, Crater Lake. All of them are beginning to show signs of an imminent eruption. In the past, I've shown you the seismograms showing harmonic signatures, meaning magma down beneath the volcano plug is there and it's in force. It's under pressure, causing earthquakes. I've shown you what has happened. The harmonic tremors are indicative of the magma going to erupt. Okay? I'm going to be quite honest with you. Collet is here. Collet Modar is here in the chat saying, can a volcano erupt even though there are no earthquakes or warning signs? I live right across the street from Mount Canocti, Clear Lake Volcanic Field. Now, Collet, What you possibly don't know is there is one seismogram that the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network has left up. One seismogram that they've left up. They have basically discontinued all other 4 seismographs that they have had there monitoring Crater Lake. Only one of them has current information. That is the bunkhouse, Crater Lake bunkhouse. If you go to the PNSN site and put in CLBH, it should bring up Crater Lake bunkhouse. That is the only seismogram that's even correct. And occasionally they even manipulate that. The Pacific Northwest Seismic Network and the USGS downgrades earthquakes. They put up false information. If the seismograph shows the information and they don't like it, they will alter the details of the seismograph. I've caught them doing it. But again, the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network had Crater Lake, Fleetwood Cove on the northeast side of Crater Lake. They had that seismograph up, or seismograph, the machine up. They took it down. Crater Lake, Mount Scott. Half the time it's down now. Half the time the PNSN takes it down, showing no image available, no photo available. That means they shut down the seismograph. On the central southern end of Crater Lake, they have another Crater Lake bunkhouse there. That is the only one seismograph that we can even use. So if you look over it, when you go to the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network and you plug in the information about that volcano, CLBH, Crater Lake bunkhouse, that should show you a detail showing you what is happening at Crater Lake. However, be advised, they alter the information. The Wizard seismogram that's over on Wizard Island is a seismograph that's sitting out in the weather. If there's heavy winds, if there's rain or snow pelting that seismograph, guess what? It's going to show a lot of activity. So you cannot trust the seismograph at Wizard Lake. And not just that. Half the time they don't even show any activity at all at Wizard Lake. And that's a fallacy. The Wizard Lake seismograph is sitting up on top of the magma plug. I shouldn't say the magma plug, but the lava plug at the summit of that volcano. Wizard Lake is the summit plug of the volcano. You would think that they would have that seismograph protected from any other external forces. They usually do it the other seismographs. Why are they keeping that one out where it's subject to environmental forces? I don't know. But what I am telling you now, the Cascade Mountain Range, let me put up the picture that I have here of the Cascade Mountain volcanoes right here. This is not all of them. This is, however, a great deal of them. Okay, I'm not showing all the volcanoes up into British Columbia, Canada. Mount Baker up on the north, just south of Canadian border. Glacier Peak just south of that, 47 miles south of that. I'm not showing Constitution. Mount Constitution is 40 miles southwest of Mount Baker. Not showing that one. We, however, are showing Mount Rainier. We're showing Mount Adams. We're showing Mount St. Helens here. We are showing Mount Hood. They're showing Mount Jefferson here. They're showing Three Sisters Volcano Complex, Newberry Volcano. They're not showing several others. Why? They're showing Medicine Lake Volcano Complex It's a series of vents over just south of the Oregon border in Northern California. But however, they are not let me back up. The seismographs over at Medicine Lake are not active. The seismographs at Medicine Lake are not active. They used to be. They used to show a lot of activity at Medicine Lake, but they're not. They're showing Mount Shasta also in the Cascade Mountain Range in Northern California. They're showing Lassen Peak. All of these volcanoes and more are part of the Cascade Mountain Range. There's about 20 volcanoes in the Cascade Mountain Range, but they're not showing all of them. Why not? Why not? Mount Lassen on the south. Mount Adams just west of Mount St. Helens. Silverthorn Volcano in Canada. Carbon River just west of Mount Rainier. These are just 4 of the 20 volcanoes that we're going to talk about tonight that you need to be aware of. These volcanoes pose a risk to human life. I'm being quite honest with you. Surgery is one of my mods here in the chat. He's saying this is a huge issue. He's absolutely right. Tonight, I want to talk to you about Cascadia, the mega thrust earthquakes that is probably going to occur within the next 2 years. Scientists say it's not going to go for 25 to 50 years. I highly suspect they are very deadly wrong, because the information I keep getting every time I go and look at the data shows that these volcanoes are going to blow. The data shows 4,000 times as many earthquakes up and down the entire coastline. 4,000 times the number of earthquakes up and down the coastline than what USGS and the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network show. Last month alone, there were over 5,000 earthquakes up and down the coastline. 5,000 earthquakes up and down the coastline from Haida Gwaii, Queen Charlotte Island, Vancouver Island south over to Mount Lassen. 5,000 earthquakes. Why are they not showing those? Why are they not showing those? Why are they not showing them? Surgery's over in Utah right now. My buddy's surgery's over in Utah, northern Utah near Logan. Folks, he is getting creaking at his house. That is because the mountain range there, the Wasatch Mountain Range is moving. The Wasatch Mountain Range is moving. But the agency is not detailing what's going on. The agency is not telling anybody what's happening. It's moving. Just like the Cascadia is. Now, how's it possible that the ocean is terrifying? I've heard many people tell me that the ocean is terrifying because they don't understand it. What about the ground underneath their feet? What if the ground beneath their feet isn't as solid as you might have thought? What if scientists have discovered something so vast, so unpredictable, and so dangerous right beneath Washington, Oregon, and California that they're now sounding the alarm? The data is there. No, they are not posting it on the USGS website. They're not posting it on the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network website. You have to go digging for it. You have to go digging for it. You're not going to find it unless you dig around the seismograms. The seismograms are the computer readouts from the machine, from the seismograph. Unless you dig around enough and understand what the seismograms are showing, you're not going to realize the danger. But what if scientists have discovered something so vast and something so unpredictable and so dangerous right beneath your feet that they're just now talking about it? They're just now talking about it. They're not showing you the data, but they're talking about it. In April 2025, a team of geophysicists made a discovery that could change everything that we thought that we knew about the Pacific Northwest. What they found wasn't just another volcano. It wasn't just another volcano. It was something deeper, larger, and more alive. Let's talk about this discovery beneath Washington, Oregon, and Northern California that has scientists deeply concerned about why time might be running out. A mystery beneath the mountains. The Cascade Mountain Range has become home to a number of active and dormant volcanoes, forming what they call a prominent arc within the Pacific Northwest. This arc is a result of subduction. This arc that I'm talking about is a result of subduction. You cannot have a volcano without subduction. You cannot have subduction without a volcano. Fact. Fact. Let me take down some of this information I posed for you here. Subduction occurs when the plates go underneath each other. The Pacific plate and the Juan de Fuca plate are subducting under the American plate. The Pacific plate and the Juan de Fuca plate are subducting under the North American plate, just like this. Those two plates are taking a deep dive under the North American plate, just like this. That is causing mountain building, the raising up of the mountains in the area. It's also causing volcanoes. Again, you cannot have subduction without volcanoes. You can't have volcanoes without subduction. Okay? I want everybody to understand that. The Cascade Mountain Range that I just showed that is up here where you can see it is home to a number of active and dormant volcanoes. But I'm going to tell you this. I do not believe that any of the volcanoes in the Cascade Mountain Range is dormant. I believe they are all active. All of the volcanoes are active. They are recharging. All of the volcanoes worldwide are recharging. Okay? This arc that I was talking about, this prominent volcanic arc within the Pacific Northwest, it's a result of subduction, which includes at least 20 major volcanoes along with thousands of smaller volcanic vents. Smaller volcanic vents. Those vents are craters in the earth near or around the volcanoes. Volcanic vents are vents around the volcano where the volcano has previously released lava. That's why they call them vents. Okay? Along with thousands of volcanic vents. They're all active. This stretches from southern British Columbia through Washington, Oregon, and again into Northern California. They include notable volcanoes such as Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, Mount Hood and Mount Shasta, and Mount Lassen. The last time I checked a seismogram at Mount Lassen, it showed a lot of activity. I believe Mount Lassen may be beginning to get ready to erupt. I believe Mount Lassen is getting ready to erupt. Now, there is a mystery beneath these mountains. Washington state itself is draped in coniferous forests, tree-lined forests, great big huge lodge pine trees. These long pole pine trees, crowned by glaciated summits of glaciers on top of the volcanoes, the Cascade Mountains. And the Cascade Mountains are known for its natural beauty. Absolutely it is. But few realize the geological powder keg that's hidden beneath this landscape, stretching from not just Mount Baker, but up through southern Canada, into Mount Baker in the north to Mount Adams in the central part, actually in the southern part of Washington, going down into Oregon and Northern California. The Cascade Arc defines Washington's volcanic backbone. Beneath these peaks lie a complex and poorly understood network of magma bodies, magma channels, and subduction zones. Understand magma bodies being channels where magma is flowing from the Pacific over the volcanoes. Magma bodies. The time between eruptions is usually measured in decades or centuries. So eruptions are not part of our everyday experience. Yes, we last saw Mount St. Helens erupt in 1980 and 2003. 1980 was a major eruption at Mount St. Helens, and then a smaller eruption occurred at Mount St. Helens in 2003. Okay? The eruptions at Mount St. Helens vividly demonstrate the power that impacts the Cascade volcanoes can unleash when they do erupt. Most of us have seen the eruption of Mount St. Helens on video. I've seen it many times. I've also seen what happens when people live or operate near volcanoes. Fault lines in the early 2025 this year, deep beneath this iconic terrain. The Earth sent out a new kind of signal. It didn't begin with a bang. It began with a whisper of low haunting vibration, felt only by the most sensitive instruments buried in the mountain range. In the past episodes of this program for many weeks now, I have shown you seismograms showing harmonic tremors. We've talked about harmonic tremors being caused by active magma within the volcano. These harmonic tremors of vibrations are felt only by the most sensitive instruments buried in the mountain range. These weren't sharp jolts of tectonic quakes, nor were they icy creaks of glacial shearing. These tremors pulsed, they hummed, they moved, originating from depths of 30 to 45 kilometers beneath the surface. 30 to 45 kilometers beneath the surface, magma channels. Magma channels. One of my dear friends years ago that I have talked to many times, and I mentioned him the other day when I talked about this in the beginning. He and I talk quite frequently. He told me about times that he camped over by Mount Rainier and Mount St. Helens, fishing in the lakes and streams and rivers over there. When he was laying on the ground trying to sleep, or even when he was resting, he felt the pulses in the ground. He felt the pulses in the ground where the magma was pulsing through the magma chambers like hydraulic fluid. His name was Captain Ned, if some of you remember his name. YouTube hated him. YouTube hated him because he always told the exact truth. He and I have been friends for a very long time. He talked about that magma pulsing beneath the ground. What he found and others have found on the instruments were not sharp jolts of tectonic quakes, nor were they icy creaks of glacial shearing going on. These were tremors, pulsed tremors, and minor earthquakes. They hummed, they moved, originating, like I said, with depths of 30 to 45 kilometers beneath the surface. They traveled deliberately, shifting from the vicinity of Mount St. Helens, past Mount Rainier, arcing toward the Seattle Fault Zone. Initially, scientists theorized groundwater movement or deep tectonic creep. But these pulses were too patterned, too synchronized to be tectonic creep or groundwater movement. They formed a migrating wave that some experts now compare to a pressure front within a massive magmatic system. Think of hydraulic fluid now, pumping through a system. Folks, you need to be aware of what's going on. I'm hoping we will have a great deal of people tuned to this program tonight, because what I am talking about is danger coming to this area. 800-mile span between southern Canada and northern California. Soon after this happened, other signs also emerged. Scientists set up magnetic arrays that detected a sharp rise in subsurface conductivity, electromagnetic conductivity, an indication of superheated, partially molten rock. GPS sensors installed across the Cascade mountain range began picking up micro uplift, suggesting that the land itself was being subtly pushed upward. I want to say this. From all indications that I have, I don't think it's subtly. I do not think that the uplift is subtle at all. In several boreholes are seismographs that are having sensors that have been put in boreholes, drilled out holes into the earth. Boreholes. In several boreholes, temperature anomalies were recorded up to 15 degrees centigrade. They were recorded up to 15 degrees Celsius. Borehole temperature anomalies were recorded up to 15 degrees Celsius. Hotter than expected with localized spikes in radon. Yes, radon. Carbon dioxide, CO2. Sulfur dioxide, SO2. And mantle-derived helium-3 gas. Mantle-derived helium-3 gas from the mantle. Yes, guys, that only occurs when magma is near the surface. Helium-3 gas comes from the mantle through magma. That is why they are finding helium-3 gas in the magma. This is not a typical tectonic event. It was deeper and more powerful, and far more mysterious than geologists now believe. It was not a typical magmatic tectonic event. Scientists have discovered the edges of vast widening magma corridors. Vast awakening and widening magma corridors. Corridors that stretch beneath Washington's volcanic spine. north and south. They push disturbingly close to densely populated areas, densely populated urban areas. What lies beneath these peaks and valleys of Washington and Oregon may not just be ancient rock and sleeping faults. What lies beneath the volcanic spine here could be a molten Leviathan, could be a molten Leviathan stirring beneath our feet. And what it's whispering now could one day erupt into a roar. I hope you understand what I'm talking about. I'm glad Aubrey is here. I want to speak directly to her. I was going to call her before I came on the air. Aubrey, when I first talked to you several weeks ago, I last talked to you several weeks ago, Aubrey asked me if it was safe being in the Cascade Mountain Range up near Seattle. She wanted to go there to visit friends this summer, friends and family. I told her I didn't think there was any reason she shouldn't go. Aubrey, I believe there is danger within the Cascade Mountain Range. I now believe there is danger within the Cascade Mountain Range. And this could one day erupt into a roar. Three-dimensional images that have changed everything was supposed to be a routine imaging operation. Added one more layer to the added geological map of the Pacific Northwest. Scientists obtained a three-dimensional image. But what researchers from the USBS and Caltech and the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network uncovered in early 2025 was anything but routine. Anything but routine. Using advanced seismic tomography, underground imaging radar, essentially a CAT scan of the Earth's interior, scientists constructed a high-resolution three-dimensional model of the crust beneath western Washington, feeding data from over 400 seismic stations and integrating INSAR satellite deformation readings. The team processed months of subsurface echoes to reveal something unprecedented that they had no idea was happening. A massive semi-molten magma chamber, vast beyond anything previously detected, stretching from the base of Mount St. Helens in the south, through the colossal plumbing beneath Mount Rainier, and extending deep into the crust underneath Seattle, underneath eastern Seattle. This was not a series of disconnected magma pockets. This was not a series of disconnected magma pockets. This was, however, a corridor, a single unbroken reservoir of partially molten rock, pressurized and rising. Magma rock, magma molten rock, hot, pressurized, and rising. I've explained what happens when there is pressurized molten rock rising within a volcano. Again, let's look at my one hand right here. This represents the lava plug at the top of Mount Rainier or any other volcano. And magma coming up from underneath like this through the magma chamber, pounding on that lava plug. Pounding on that lava plug. Now, as the magma comes underneath and pounds on that lava plug, it starts fracturing that plug. Fissures represented by the creases between my fingers appear. Those fissures appear in that lava plug. Why? Because the magma underneath is hammered on it. Keeps hammering on it, fracturing that rock. Pretty soon, these fissures go all the way down to the magma. These tiny fissures go all the way down to the magma. 6 to 7% of all magma is water. 6 to 7% of all magma is water. What happens then? That water vapor from the magma seeps up into that lava plug through those fissures. That water vapor, that steam coming from the magma is superheated. What happens when that happens? These tiny cracks in that lava plug become larger. Heat enlarges everything. Heat enlarges everything. And pretty soon, at some point in time, those lava plugs in that volcano are going to pop just like this. We already have hot steam coming through those lava plugs. Every one of these Cascade volcanoes are steaming. Every one of these Cascade volcanoes are steaming. That's how that steam comes through the rock. Steam. And at some point in time, with that magma still hitting that rock, further fracturing that big, huge plug there. And that steam coming up through the fissures is going to enlarge those fissures to some point where that lava plug is going to shatter into a million pieces. That is when we have a eruption of the volcano. In 1980, Mount St. Helens erupted out of the side and the top of the volcano. The lava had developed such pressure it was pushing out on the side of the volcano like this, forming a bulge. Pretty soon the side of Mount St. Helens began to be thinner and thinner. And all of a sudden, when that happened, the side of the volcano disappeared and the hot molten lava came out of it, just like that. And the top of the volcano fell down on top of that eruption. Now, there is a corridor of single unbroken reservoir of partially molten rock, hot, pressurized, and rising. The thermal gradients shocked even the most seasoned geophysicists. Some sectors showed a crustal temperature increase of up to 40 degrees Celsius in less than 6 months. A temperature increase of up to 40 degrees Celsius in less than 6 months. That's huge. That's huge. Melt percentages reached over 20% in certain areas. Magma melt percentages reached over 20% in certain areas, placing the material dangerously close to erupting. Dangerously close to erupting. Thresholds in the upper dome of the chamber are now just 10 kilometers, 6 miles beneath the surface in some zones. 10 kilometers, 6 miles beneath the surface in some zones. A depth geologically considered shallow, but it wasn't just a size. It was what it meant. Ground uplift that we've been seeing and previously dismissing as seasonal variation now align perfectly with the bulging edges of the magma corridor. The bulging areas of the magma corridor, the magma channel. The magma channel edges are bulging like this. Gas emissions from the surface vents, particularly the carbon dioxide, CO2, the sulfur dioxide, SO2, and helium-3 were now understood as warnings, not anomalies. These are warnings, not anomalies. Now, I have had some of you call me on the phone, and we talked about you smelling sulfur dioxide. If you smell sulfur dioxide over in Washington or Oregon or even Northern California, that means you are smelling magma near the surface. You're smelling magma beneath the surface. And it is emitting sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, which is a colorless, odorless gas, and even helium-3, which is also odorless. Helium-3 coming from the center of the Earth. These are warnings, not anomalies. And then there were the fractures. The fractures that I just got through telling you about. The model is a spider web-like weakness. The model that I'm telling you about is a spider-like weakness. In the surrounding rock zones, where seismic pressures already caused microquakes to open, forming escape routes for gas and potentially magma itself. If you guys are seeing small fissures open up in the ground, those fissures are emitting sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, and also helium-3. Was this corridor created recently, or has it always existed dormant and undetected under our feet? That's the question. If awakened, it could erupt in one place or in many places. It can erupt simultaneously as well. Any one of these volcanoes or one of these cracks could erupt simultaneously. That's what one geologist who has reviewed the imaging report talked about. This is also the question that everyone feared. Everyone feared. Now, as you know, I don't respect media. I don't respect mainstream media. The television stations and some of the radio stations have reported on what the Pacific Northwest Network and the USGS have talked about when it comes to the Cascade earthquake happening. Yes, they've talked about it. In most instances, they've talked about it openly, not hiding information. Sometimes they've talked about it and hid information. Yes, they've hid information. Now, if this isn't a volcano, what if it's not a volcano, what is it? If it's a system within itself, what if the system has begun to stir? If it's not a volcano, it must be a system. If it's a system, what if that system has started to stir? I'm asking. The first signs of pressure buildup. The true warning didn't come from beneath the volcano. It came from the skies in March of 2025, almost 2 months ago. Satellites orbiting 500 miles above the Pacific Northwest have detected something alarming. Surface uplift. GPS sensors have detected uplift around Mount Rainier. I've talked about it. The Pacific Northwest Seismic Network had denied it. Now the satellites are admitting that's what's happened. There is surface uplift around Mount Rainier, and it's accelerating. The surface uplift around Mount Rainier is accelerating. At first, scientists believed that it might be a seasonal shift from snowmelt or groundwater expansion. But then came the gas carbon dioxide, the sulfur dioxide, the hydrogen sulfide, and yes, the unmistakable chemical footprints of magma degassing near the summit of Mount Rainier. Sensors began reporting anomalous high concentrations of these volcanic gases, not once, not occasionally, but daily. Daily. Each time that satellite had a spike, a whisper of the Earth's hidden engine, signaling that the magma was moving, not just under the Mount Rainier stations that are installed in Nisqually and the South Whidbey Island Fault. Systems began to pick up something else. Low-frequency harmonic tremors. Low-frequency harmonic tremors that we talked about. I've shown you the harmonic tremors on the seismogram. These aren't random shakes. They are the eerie drum-like vibrations associated with rising magma pushing through the rock, warping stone, and seeking a release as the tremors have intensified. Rising magma pushing through the rock, warping and fracturing the stone, seeking the release as the tremors have intensified. So the heat borehole arrays near Carbon River. There are heat boreholes near the Carbon River. This is the Carbon River here, and you see Mount Rainier in the background. So did the heat borehole arrays near Carbon River showed ambient temperature increases of nearly 8 degrees Celsius over historical background readings and groundwater samples that have been collected across the western slope that have tested positive for elevated radon gas, a known precursor to seismic activity linked to pressure changes in the crust. Soon, even more data began converging. Time-lapse satellite imagery have shown the ground uplift. The ground uplift was not localized, however. The ground uplift was not localized. The uplift extended in a radial pattern, forming a shallow dome-like swell around the base of Mount Rainier. A dome-like swell around the base of Mount Rainier. Do you understand what that is? A dome-like swell? That is caused by a magma reservoir beneath Mount Rainier. A magma reservoir beneath Mount Rainier. We've seen that happen over in Iceland recently, around Svartsengi. That is what's going on at Mount Rainier. Myla Ryan Michael says you can see the bulge on Google Earth. 4 years ago, we had one of our EMA family members that I've lost contact with. I don't know what happened to her. She stopped talking. She's disappeared. She lived on the side of Mount Rainier. She helped hikers and other people that were playing around Mount Rainier get to where they were going. She told me of the bulge then, 4 years ago. It's probably gotten larger. Ground uplift. Ground uplift and that dome-like swelling around the base of Mount Rainier. It's going on now. It's happening now. Now, when I'm talking about deformation, deformation is happening when magma comes into a volcano or in any area, meaning the ground is deformed. It's either rising or falling. Ground deformation. Cracks in the ground, cracks in rock, cracks all throughout the area happen. The scale of ground deformation suggests the presence of growing pressurized magma reservoir, not a temporary fluctuation. A growing pressurized reservoir. Isotope analysis of the gases revealed further insights. The helium ratios contained an unusually high 3 to 4 helium signature, indicating the gases were sourced from deep in the Earth's mantle plumes, rather than the shallow crust of rock. Helium comes from deep within the Earth. That is the same fingerprint geologists found before the 1991 Philippine Mount Pinatubo eruption. They saw the same thing happen in 1991 in the Philippines right before Mount Pinatubo erupted. Using numerical modeling, researchers calculated that the stress accumulation beneath Mount Rainier has reached a critical point. The stress accumulation beneath Mount Rainier has reached a critical point. The cap rock, the plug of Mount Rainier, a dense lava plug with just above the magma body, just above the magma deep within the magma chamber, was showing signs of fracturing under thermal stress. Thermal stress, hot superheated magma hitting that plug, and hydraulic pressure, magma under pressure hitting that plug. If that magma pressure beneath that plug breaches, the plug cap will have a sudden explosive eruption that could follow. Does everybody understand what I'm talking about? Does everybody understand what I'm talking about? It's just not Mount Rainier either. It's just not Mount Rainier. Now, especially hydrothermal systems above it. Groundwater. As that magma reaches the surface of the groundwater, what happens then? The superheated magma from underneath heats that groundwater, and what happens? It flashes. It flashes, just like it flashes over in Yellowstone. The geysers. They flash the steam, don't they? Geologists began to see the pattern thermal updrafts have accelerated, and the degassing harmonic tremor surface deformation. The degassing harmonic pattern here. Degassing harmonic tremor surface deformation. The high mantle gas signatures, the helium-3 and helium-4. Cap rock volcanic plug destabilization. We've talked about this on many occasions during our programs in the past. The cap rock or the plug of the volcano has destabilized. All this information that I'm telling you is pointing to one terrifying conclusion. The magma beneath Washington wasn't just shifting. It was uprising, and it's expanding, preparing for an eruption. The magma beneath Washington and Oregon is preparing for an eruption. One volcanologist reviewing the composite graph of gas emissions and tremor upheavals, intervals, said it plainly. It's like listening to a sleeping giant begin to hyperventilate. The volcanologist said it was like listening to a sleeping giant hyperventilate. Could it erupt tomorrow? Maybe not. But make no mistake about it. This system is waking up. and we are already hearing its first breath. Let me bring it closer to home. Let me bring this whole discussion closer to home. Seattle-Tacoma area, Vancouver City, Washington State. The people who live on Vancouver Island, Vancouver, British Columbia, Portland, and other large cities around Oregon. The National Volcanic Threat Assessment identifies risks to populated areas. Let me explain. The volcanic threat is a combination of hazards. The dangerous or destructive natural phenomena produced by a volcano and exposure. The people and property at risk from the volcanic phenomena. Based upon eruption history and distance to volcanic epicenters. A 2018 volcanic threat assessment designated 9 volcanoes in Washington and Oregon with a high or very high rating. Very high threat, Crater Lake. Very high threat, Crater Lake. Glacier Peak just south of Mount Baker. Mount Baker itself up near the Canadian border. Mount Hood. Faith and Trust talked about the axial seamount may erupt as soon as June 5th. It's already erupting. It's already erupting. Last week we showed you video, undersea video showing the axial seamount erupting. But again, a very high threat level is Crater Lake, Glacier Peak, Mount Baker, Mount Hood, Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, Newberry Volcano, the Three Sisters. Three Sisters. Let me show you a picture of the Three Sisters. Right there. This is the Three Sisters complex. The Pacific Northwest Seismic Network and USBS has only one seismograph recording seismic information for all 3 of these volcanoes. So the USGS and the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network is not showing accurate information when and if these volcanoes are going to erupt. But, as I said, Three Sisters is also a highly active volcano. And it has been listed as a very dangerous high eruptive volcano. Another is Mount Adams. Mount Adams just east of Mount St. Helens. The connection to Seattle when most people think of volcanic danger. When most people think of volcanic danger, they think of Mount Rainier. Again, this is Carbon River near Mount Rainier. Carbon River is fed from glacial runoff from the volcano. As the volcano heats up, it produces runoff down the streams and rivers around Mount Rainier, even over here to Carbon River. Now, when people most think of the dangers, they think about Rainier. They picture remote shaking peaks, remote smoking peaks, far from cities, with a majestic distance and silence. Mount Rainier is no more silent. Mount Rainier is no more silent. It is emitting harmonic tremors caused by magma down deep within the volcano. In 2025, this year, scientists have revealed something that has turned the assumption upside down. The assumption that nothing's going to happen is wrong. The magma system beneath Washington may be reaching into the heart of the state's most populated urban corridor. Recent seismic tomography, again, satellite underground imaging, compiled by the data by the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network, the USGS and Caltech, has mapped a westward extension of the partially molten corridor underneath Mount Rainier. A westward extension of the partially molten corridor underneath Mount Rainier. A Mount Rainier eruption would pose significant risk for surrounding areas, including lahars. Does everybody know what a lahar is? Does everybody understand what a lahar is? Lisa and others that have faith as I do, please reduce your talk of coming Jesus Christ. Yes, he's going to come. And all of this is part of it. But please reduce our talk of coming Jesus Christ. I want to talk specifically about what's going on and what we're going to face here. When I get finished with this discussion, we can talk about the coming of Jesus Christ. I promise you. I want you to talk about it. Kathy, Adrian, and several others don't know what a lahar is. It is lava and glacial melt. Lava and glacial melt coming down through streams and rivers around the volcano, pouring all kinds of lava, superheated water down the rivers and canyons around the volcano, causing flooding and debris, pushing tree limbs, trees, rock, and other debris down the river. Volcanic mud flows, volcanic ash, and potential impacts on air quality. The most immediate danger is going to be from lahars. The most immediate danger is going to be through lahars. All that volcanic debris coming down the creeks and rivers around the volcano over to urbanized centers, including Friday Harbor. Over around Seattle and the Tacoma area. Nisqually. All the urban areas around Seattle are going to be affected. Every one of them. The most immediate danger is going to be from the lahars. They're going to travel rapidly down the river valleys around the volcano, and they will destroy the infrastructure and lives of people. These lahars are going to rapidly travel through the river valleys. They're going to destroy infrastructure, and they're going to kill people. Empress Ascended says, wow. Oh yeah. But that's not half of it. Rob 52 says that's what happened in the 1980 Mount St. Helens eruption. You're right. It did. Now, as we have spoken about what has happened with Mount Spur at Anchorage, Alaska. The Alaska Volcano Observatory issued an air quality alert regarding a possible eruption of Mount Spur, which is 75 miles west of Anchorage, Alaska. Because if that volcano would erupt, all that ash and substance would go up into the air, and the wind would push it eastbound. The wind around Mount Spur would push all that asphalt, all the toxic gases eastward over Anchorage, Alaska, and other cities. It happens, and we must take precautions. We must take precautions. Air quality will be severely impacted by volcanic ash and gases. Now, this corridor appears to stretch beneath the Kent Valley, eastern Tacoma, as far north as Issaquah and Bellevue. In some regions, particularly east of Tacoma, the top of the magmatic body, the magma channel, lies a mere 8 to 10 kilometers below the surface. And in some cases, it's even closer to the surface than that. Dangerously shallow. This magmatic body is dangerously shallow by geologic standards. That's comparable, again, to a pre-eruption magma depth at Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines and Soufriere Hills in Montserrat. That erupted about a year or so ago. This proximity to the surface of the crust that we walk on is especially alarming, given the hydrological profile of the Puget Sound area. The Puget Sound area, guys, was crafted by Mount Rainier. If you live or you have relatives or friends living in the greater Seattle area, they're living on a great big huge rift of lava. A great big huge rift of lava as a result of Mount Rainier erupting. Okay? Now, it's worse. It's worse. There is a hydrological profile. Because magma is pulsing through this magma corridor. Magma is pulsing through the corridor. Deep aquifers, water aquifers, crisscross this corridor. Many of these aquifers supply drinking water and feed major rivers like the Green and White Rivers. According to the modeling by the University of Washington's Department of Earth Sciences, if magma breaches into one of these aquifers, it could cause a phreatic eruption, an explosion. A phreatic eruption would be an explosion. An explosive reaction between the magma and the groundwater. These stream-driven blasts occur with minimal warning. They do not need a massive magma volume to devastate local infrastructure and communities. Instead, a rapid flashing of groundwater into high-pressure steam can cause rock fragmentation, ground failure. Ground failure. Aubrey is asking me in the chat to call her tomorrow. I will do that. I will do that, Aubrey. She says she's not home. She's going to finish watching this in replay. Guys, these magma channels are running underneath the ground, not just at the volcanoes. What happens when the magma rushes into the groundwater system, the aquifers? There will be a rapid flashing of groundwater hitting the high temperature magma and will cause rock fragmentation. It's going to cause an explosion, ground failure, and crater-forming eruptions. Crater-forming eruptions. Charlene is saying sinking of land? Possibly. Possibly. Curiosity says steam power is phenomenal. Yes, it is. Now, traditional volcanic monitoring tools like surface gas sensors and shallow seismic arrays are often ineffective in blind zones like these. Urban development muffles subtle sounds. The urban development muffles subtle signals. Deep gas channels are blocked by impermeable rock and electromagnetic interference from city infrastructure that can cause disruption of magnetic imaging. All that cityfied interference, yes, I'm calling it cityfied interference, interference from seismic monitoring, magnetic imaging. Still clues are emerging. INSAR satellite data at orbit has revealed slow ground uplift east of Tacoma, less than 5 millimeters per year, 2 inches a year. But regionally consistent drone mounting infrared sensors flown by the USGS teams have detected an anomalous warm zone south of Lake Tapps. They've detected an anomalous warm zone south of Lake Tapps. Warm zone caused by magma getting near the surface. Magma coming up through those magma channels up towards the surface, causing that anomalous warm zone. Elevated sulfur dioxide emissions have been recently recorded near Mud Mountain Dam. Sulfur dioxide emissions recorded at Mud Mountain Dam, where no volcanic activity was previously believed to exist. So what would an eruption look like beneath this corridor? In one worst case scenario, modeled by the Cascade Geohazard Initiative, this Cascade Geohazard Initiative started years ago. I was part of one of the first earthquake drills in the Seattle area. I was part of one of the first earthquake drills in the Seattle area, where we employed the police, the fire departments, the sheriff's departments, the National Guard, and all the other agencies that you can think of to help save lives after an earthquake or a volcanic eruption. We did that drill. Since that time, there's been 2 more drills. Two more Cascade drills. The last one was called Cascade Rising. I monitored it and was part of the drill from a distance via the internet. I know what they're doing. We are trying to save lives here. We are trying to save lives. Now, Heidi Petrick just gifted us 5 Emergency Management Associates memberships, 1-month memberships to our YouTube channel here. Susan Crumby, Robert Singer, Richard Swanson, Griffey 978, and Dan the Breaking Newsman received 1-month memberships to our EMA channel here. If you received an emergency management membership, please thank Heidi Petrick. Heidi, thank you from the bottom of my heart. We appreciate that a lot. And this is especially important because we will have another members-only meeting tomorrow morning. Tomorrow morning, sometime after 10 a.m. Let's get back to this eruption of one of the volcanoes, or a new volcanic eruption around the Seattle-Tacoma area. Rapid phreatic eruption, or magma hitting the water basin, the aquifer, near Auburn could trigger a slope collapse into the Green River. A lahar flood, 25 meters, 75 feet downstream, reaching Kent and parts of Raton in under 90 minutes. Under 90 minutes, a lahar flood. A simultaneous ashfall from a hydrothermal explosion would shut down SeaTac Airport and blanket Interstate 5. What happens when hot ash hits pavement? The pavement you're driving on becomes like heavy cream or mud on the highway. The highway becomes very slick. You can't drive very fast, if at all. SeaTac would be enveloped in ash, unable to put up planes or even land planes. Jetliners and other planes don't like ash. They would cause the planes to fall out of the air. Planes would be diverted elsewhere around Seattle in that area. They would not be allowed anywhere near there. Public safety officials estimate that over 120,000 people would be affected within hours. Over 120,000 people would be affected within hours. I believe that number is probably in the millions now. That area is susceptible to millions of people living there. It's a highly urbanized corridor. Not only 120,000 people, but millions of people would be affected. The most chilling part of this scenario doesn't require super eruption. It only requires one point of failure in an increasingly unstable system. Seattle, Bellevue, Tacoma, cities that may not sit beside the volcano, but according to the latest maps, they may now sit at the top of it. They may not sit on top of Mount Rainier, however. They may sit on top of a magma body. The question scientists are quietly asking is no longer if, but when it happens. It's no longer if, but when it happens. Shoreline is also saying ash would choke out automobile carburetors. Yes, it would. Not just carburetors. The new modern vehicles run on automated gas systems. However, allowing ash through the air filters, yes, ash through the air filters, would get down into the engine, causing all of a sudden the engine to stop. You would have to almost immediately leave your car or replace air filter every few miles, because your air filters would get clogged with ash. You'd no longer be able to operate your vehicle like that. The next question is this: is this part of something bigger? What if Washington's rising magma corridor isn't the exception, but just the beginning of something far more extensive and even far more dangerous? What happens then? New studies released last month, April 2025, have revealed compelling geophysical links between Washington's deep magmatic structure and neighboring volcanic provinces. Crossbar tomography data shows a continuum of elevated heat flow from low seismic velocity zones, extending southward into Oregon's Three Sisters and California's Mount Shasta system and down to Mount Lassen. In other words, what lies directly beneath Mount Rainier may be connected directly or indirectly to a broader corridor of molten magma spanning 3 states. Molten materials spanning 3 states. Researchers at the University of Oregon have identified synchronous surface deformation events in both Washington and Oregon. Surface deformation in Washington and Oregon happening at the same time. During one 3-week period in April, satellite data showed a subtle but measurable uplift occurring simultaneously near Mount Rainier, Crater Lake, and Three Sisters complex. Maybe it's a coincidence, maybe, but the chemical signatures tell a different story. Gas samples from surface vents from volcanoes in both Washington and Oregon now show similar helium-3 and helium-4 isotope ratios. They show similar helium-3 to helium-4 isotope ratios, indicative of deep mantle-derived gases. Indicative of deep mantle-derived gases. Helium-3 is a primordial isotope of helium. It's only found in Earth's mantle and even on the moon. It's believed to be the signature of Earth's formation evolution. It's present in the deep mantle, with some evidence suggesting that the metallic core may be a source linking helium-3 into the mantle. Helium-3 is also detected in volcanic rock and magma, particularly in regions of hotspot activity, which suggests it can be transported to the surface through geological processes. Now, these rare ratios are normally unique to individual systems. Finding them duplicated across multiple sites suggests a shared source, or at the very least a connected reservoir. Kathy Behrman says, sure will be nothing like we have ever witnessed. You're right. It'll be like nothing ever witnessed before. And doesn't stop in Oregon. This does not stop at the Washington border. It doesn't stop in Oregon either. The same anomalies, elevated microseismic swarms, and increased sulfur dioxide emissions have been observed near Mount Shasta and Mount Lassen in Northern California. While there's been no official statement that has confirmed a direct underground connection, the patterns are troubling, in the very least. Could the Pacific Northwest be sitting at the top of a mega network of molten lava? Could the Pacific Northwest be sitting at the top of a mega network of volcanic activity? A linear threat beneath ancient forests, fault lines, and even modern cities. Yes, fault lines, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen. Fault lines are also connected to sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide. Fault lines. You may see a fault line connected to a volcano or a magma chamber. Down in Southern California, it is connected. All we have to look at is the San Andreas Fault. Some geologists fear that this is the early ignition phase of a slow cascade of pressure buildups that could, once unleashed, trigger a can trigger a sequential eruption or eruptions, or widespread magmatic surges. Widespread magmatic surges. This idea is not fiction. This idea is not science fiction. This is real. In the very least, Heidi Petrick just gave us a $50 super chat. Heidi, I'm giving you an EMA sticker on your super chat. I'm also giving you a thumbs up. Heidi Petrick says, Ron, I start work in Torino, way south of me, next week. If I can get a picture of Mount Rainier, I'll send it to you. Thank you so much, Heidi. I'd appreciate that. Thank you so much. And thank you for that beautiful super chat. We need to keep this program running. If any of you can give us super chats here on our programs, or you can also, at the bottom of your screen, you see our 2 PayPal locations and our Venmo location where you can send donations as well. You'll also see our address scrolling across the bottom of your screen. 504 Bethel Road, Box 401. Morganton, North Carolina. The zip code here is 28655. You can send us donations in the mail. You can send us donations to our PayPal and our Venmo locations as well. We'd appreciate that to keep this program on the air. Now, what I've just told you is not science fiction. It's real. It's real. In the very least, it has become a hypothesis that even the most cautious experts are no longer ignoring. They are no longer ignoring the risk to millions of people. This is real. This is very real. That's why we're talking about it. I want to make sure you understand the risk here. The risk to millions. More than 7 million people live in the potential impact zone of Washington's growing magma corridor. And that number could be very conservative. From Olympia to Seattle, from Tacoma to Everett, the entire metropolitan area rests on top of the ground that is showing signs of unrest. But here's the catch. Most emergency preparedness plans that the authorities have written, and some of you may also have written, have been built around individual eruption sites. You need to have a preparedness plan addressing every kind of emergency that could happen. You need to have an emergency preparedness plan addressing any kind of emergency that could happen to you or your family. Okay? Most emergency preparedness plans have been built around individual eruption sites as well. Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, or even Glacier Peak, Mount Hood or Mount Adams, Three Sisters, Bachelor Volcano, Newberry Volcano, Crater Lake, Shasta and Lassen. I've been talking to a great deal of people lately that live on or near these locations. And yet, this is exactly what geologists are now worrying about. A multi-point system-wide scenario. A multi-point scenario-wide system. Anything could happen. Anything could happen. It could happen instantaneously. Simultaneously around and with other volcanoes. Or it doesn't have to be a volcano. It could be an eruptive area in your own city, in the valley near you. It could happen anytime. And Hurricane Heather's here talking with Ann Pickering. And Pickering was talking about her watching a film yesterday about Mount Vesuvius going up. It won't happen in real life. Yes, it will. It will happen in real life. The authorities in Italy are monitoring the earthquakes around Mount Vesuvius. Guess what? It's very dangerous. It might not seem dangerous to us because the USGS is not talking about all the earthquakes, nor is the European agency showing us what's going on there. There are around 400 earthquakes every 2 weeks. 400 earthquakes every 2 weeks. Sometimes more than that around Mount Vesuvius. That area is also a very populated area, very urban populated area. And when Mount Vesuvius goes up, guess what? Property is going to go up with it. That area is going to be destroyed. And we're talking about this area of the Pacific Northwest tonight. Exactly the same thing. Curiosity says rehearse your plan. When you write a preparedness plan, you need to rehearse your plan. Review it. Do a dry run, a drill. Do a drill. If you haven't already done it, do it immediately. Charlene is saying, if the reservoir is connected, is it possible one could spark a trigger and light up the entire volcanic chain? Yes, that is possible. It's possible. One thing in the ground could spark everything. Once the magma beneath the ground finds an area, weak area in the ground, that area could erupt. Just like the weak area around Mount St. Helens erupted in 1980. Charlotte's saying it will be a vicious flow. No one can outrun the flow at 60 miles per hour. It'd be superhuman. No one will be able to outrun a lahar. Ever. What if, and this is not if, but when, because scientists have now found connections between all of the Cascade volcanoes and other magma flows around Washington and over in the Pacific. What happens when the magma erupts simultaneously around or with other volcanoes? That is what geologists are now warning us about. Critical infrastructure, hospitals, airports, energy grids, and communication lines all sit within a projected ashfall and a lahar zone. Okay? If even a moderate eruption were to occur near Mount Rainier, its satellite fault power plants could be knocked offline. Power plants in the near vicinity could be knocked offline, knocking out power to thousands and possibly millions of people. Ashfall can clog water treatment systems. Ashfall can clog water treatment systems and even overwhelm emergency services. Highways like I-5 and I-90 could be buried beneath volcanic debris or swept away by lahars. Swept away by lahars. Yes, lahars, ladies and gentlemen. Bridges in and around the Washington area have been built many years ago. And most of these bridges are not anywhere near earthquake safe. They have not been built anywhere to withstand any earthquakes or volcanic emissions. No one has tested these bridges to withstand magma system or lava coming out of these holes in the ground, flooding the area. Okay, Rob just told me that you guys are only seeing half my face. I'm sorry about that. Let me fix that. There we go. Right there. Sorry about that, guys. Think of this. When one or any of these volcanoes erupt, ash flooding over the entire city, over highways and roadways. The lahars, the mud flow from the volcano coming down through the rivers. These bridges were built back in the 30s and 40s and 50s. They were not built to withstand the earthquakes that we now know that will go on in this area. They cannot withstand the volume of lava flows and water and debris flows in the area to withstand an emergency like this. The bridges are going to go down. Then what are you going to do? Then what are you going to do? Shirley is saying the interstate Washington or Columbia bridges that support commuter traffic daily. The bridge is going to go down. They're 100 years old, not earthquake proof as well. You'll be stuck. You're going to be stuck. We've told you before that if you even expect to live through this thing, what's going to happen? You need to have a four-wheel drive vehicle. You need to have a motorcycle, an ATV, or in the very least a bicycle, because normal motorized vehicles won't get through. The bridges and the highways will be swept beneath volcanic debris. Lava flowing out through the area. We already know that the surrounding area around Mount Rainier is a great big huge lava field. That could happen again. Lava flowing down the side of Mount Rainier could easily flood this entire area again. Massive walls of superheated mud and rock, moving faster than a car on the highway or the freeway. In some simulations, emergency response times dropped to near zero for cities like Puyallup or Auburn. But the most terrifying scenario is not one eruption, it's multiple eruptions. And yes, that is a possibility here. Multiple eruptions. Now, Charlene is here in the chat saying the U.S. government will not enter the hazard area. You're right. They cannot and will not enter the hazard area, especially if there's live, red-hot lava flowing across the landscape. They're not going to do it. They may try helicopters. But not jet helicopters either, especially if there's ash in the air. If there's ash in the air, helicopter and aircraft traffic of all kinds will be stopped, grounded to a halt. Charlene is saying that the lava field in the future could be 50 times exponentially larger than the last historic flow, as witnessed in the rock structure there. You're right. And like I said, emergency response times by fire or police or sheriff will end. Anybody in these areas will be on their own. You will be on your own. Now, if this corridor destabilizes into multiple zones at the same time, driven by rising pressure and interconnecting faults, the Pacific Northwest could face a cascade of eruptions, each triggering or amplifying the previous eruption. Skies will darken for days. Flights, like I said, will be grounded. Rainwater could become acidic and would become acidic. As the ash spreads, so does the chaos. Interrupting food chains, food supplies, overwhelming hospitals with injured, and shutting down the ports of Seattle and Tacoma area, two of the busiest trade hubs on the West Coast, ground to a halt. This isn't just a geological event. It's a civil emergency waiting to happen. This is a civil emergency waiting to happen. As I stated earlier, I was part of the first earthquake drill in that area in 2014. We held our drill in Spokane. Washington. We exercised the entire Washington area. All police, all sheriffs, all magistrates, all fire departments and ambulance services, all medical teams, including hospital, were on part of the drill. We made sure we exercised as many people as possible. I was in connection and support of emergency services because at the time I was just newly retired from federal law enforcement service. So I was in charge of all of this. We did it. Since this time, we've had two more drills. Like I said, the last one was Cascadia Rising. What we're talking about tonight is the reason that the authorities have been conducting these drills. Now, you might ask, what are scientists doing now? Scientists across Washington and Oregon are no longer studying a distant geological curiosity. The scientists are monitoring a rising threat. The USGS, in collaboration with several major universities and even international seismic networks, have declared a heightened observational phase. A few years ago, scientists deployed 55 seismographs along the Oregon coast. We still have not gotten use of this seismographs off the ocean coast of Oregon. In the past few weeks, scientists have deployed over 80 more seismographs across the Cascade corridor. They've deployed 80 more new seismographs across the entire Cascade corridor. Some seismograph sensors buried deep into hardened volcanic rock. Others are mounted on fractured fault ridge lines. These instruments are sensitive enough to detect quakes smaller than a magnitude 0.1 microquake. The faintest footfalls of rising magma can be detected. Meanwhile, they have also deployed drones equipped with 2050 hyperspectral cameras that sweep the skies across and around and above Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, Mount Baker, Glacier Peak, Mount Adams, Mount Hood, Bachelor, Newberry volcanoes, husband and wife, Three Sisters, Crater Lake, and as far south as Shasta and Lassen. Yes, Shasta and Lassen are also part of the Cascade volcano system. Those flights are monitoring thermal anomalies which pinpoint precision revealing heat signatures, possibly strange heat signatures in zones that previously thought to be geologically inactive. Orbiting satellites now from NASA's Earth Observatory and the European Space Agency ESA Sentinel program now focus twice daily on the Pacific Northwest, measuring deformation in micrometers with radar interferometry. I can never pronounce this word. Interferometry. When paired with swelling patterns of GPS data, swelling patterns of the ground rising up. They're helping to build a real-time model of the magma movement beneath the surface below ground. Seismic stations are humming, listening for electromagnetic shifts that signal the movement of fluids through the conductive rock. So several of these stations have already reported low resistance zones. Low resistance zones, meaning magma is moving, forming unexpectedly beneath known fault zones. And that gas is rising. That gas is rising. Radon, sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, hydrogen sulfide, and helium-3 and 4. Traces of helium-3 and 4 that continue to seep from monitoring wells and deep summit vents. Their gas ratios combined with temperature shifts and isotopic profiles are being fed into a machine learning model trained to predict magmatic ascent, magma ascent. This isn't just research anymore. This is reconnaissance. This has become reconnaissance. This is because uplift tremors, degassing of the magma, and thermal anomalies are no longer theoretical markers. They're converging. All this data is converging. There may not be any eruption warning yet. While there may not be any eruption yet, the system is escalating. As one geologist from the Cascadia Research Collective stated, we're not just watching volcanoes anymore. We're watching a system preparing to act. The earth doesn't always scream before it moves sometimes. It murmurs deep and low beneath Washington and Oregon. Something is murmuring now, and scientists are listening closely because they know what might come to pass next. Richard Smith says this is going to be a rocky ride. I agree. I believe this is going to be a rocky ride, guys. Does anybody have any questions for me? I am more than happy to take any questions, as I already have. Curiosity says, not to mention astronomical issues as well. Planetary alignments. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, planetary alignments. It's all part of this. It's all part of this. Planetary alignments can be very dangerous, causing electromagnetic radiation. Electromagnetic radiation. which heats up the faults, overcoming the resistance that the faults or the tectonic plates now have. That area where the plates or the faults meet has a resistive feature. All that gunk and grime, all the earth, all the sand, all the biological material heats up when that electromagnetic radiation hits it, or when the plasma radiation from the sun hits it, warms it up, and it turns into a greasy, oil-like substance, allowing the plates and also earthquake faults more easily to move. That's when we have these major earthquakes. That's what happens. Total Vagabonds is here. Thank you for being here, brother. Total Vagabonds is here from Ireland. Total Vagabonds is here from Ireland. Demon Catman from the east of England. Isn't that cool? I think it's awesome. We have people from all over Europe. All over Europe. From Italy, Romania, Greece, Scandinavia, the British Virgin Isles, not British Virgin Islands, the British Isles, Japan, South America, Central America, Mexico, Australia, New Zealand. People from all over the world are here. We appreciate it. Annie Richards says, could Mount Rainier eruption travel all the way to the Pacific Ocean coast? Yes, good. It has. It has. Over at Friday Harbor, that whole area was covered in lava. Ocean Shores, Washington was covered in lava. It's a lava field. It's a lava field. Yes, you all living on the coastline could be hit with lava again. We don't know how heavy an eruption from Mount St. Helens or Mount Rainier or any of the other volcanoes when it hits. We don't know how heavy it's going to be. It could be very heavy. It could last a long time or a very short time. We don't know. But yes, it could have ash flow, ash dropping out of the sky all over the place, rivers of lava, lahar, debris, rock, trees, everything coming down the rivers, knocking out bridges and everything else, knocking out roadways and highways. Richard Smith says the Earth is living on borrowed time, pretty much. Charlene is saying underground plates liquefy. Possibly. Possibly. That area between the plates liquefies. All that biological material, the sand, the dirt, the grime, the biological material turns into an oily, greasy-like substance that allows the plates and also the faults to more freely move. That's what happens. Suri's talking about those old smuggling tunnels. Yes, guys, there are smuggling tunnels. Smuggling tunnels. Sad but true. Our United States military is blowing up some of those smuggling tunnels as we speak. Any other questions, guys? There's no dumb question. All these questions are good. All of these questions are good. We appreciate it too. Any other questions? Yes, Heather, there is a documentary on this. Richard Smith says the East Coast seismicity is small but increasing again as well. You're right. Faith and Truth says liquefaction and sinkholes. Yes. That's all figured into it. It's all figured into it. Rob 52 says, thank God for the U.S. military. I agree. But when these volcanoes erupt, like we talked about tonight, our first responders and our military won't be able to handle it. They will not be able to cross these wide expanses of molten lava on the ground. They won't be able to do it. Faith and Truth says from saltwater intrusion, yes. There will be saltwater intrusion as well. Empress Ascendant says air quality nationwide, yes. When one or more volcanoes erupt, they will throw ash in the air, and the air quality throughout the area, possibly even stretching across Canada and the United States, will be bad. Will be very bad, especially in the nearby area. Jerry Yossi says first responders will be overwhelmed. They will be. Promise. We've already drilled this. We've drilled it. I've been part of the drills. In many cases, I know the police chiefs and fire and sheriff's department. I know the fire departments as well. I have worked alongside them in many cases over the years. Surgery is saying the loss of life from this will be super huge. Yeah, I agree. Richard Smith is talking the ocean going to back up past the Salton Sea. It's possible. It's possible. We're going to talk about this another time, though. Any other questions? Surgery, you're right. This is sad, sadly. Faith and Truth says they have tactical full face masks on Amazon greater than Vietnam. I hope they do. I know Amazon has it. Other agencies and companies have them as well. Emergency essentials. Emergency essentials. I think you can also get masks from For Patriots. And Pickering says they have a boat or used to take you around. Well, guess what? There won't be any boats available to use for quite some time on a river or a lake when this magma hits or this ash hits. Watercraft, aircraft will be grounded. You're not going to be able to move. Surgery says you may have both gas and ash at the same time. You're right. You're right. It's not going to be pretty. Any questions? Sergeant is here. Thank you for being here, Sergeant. Appreciate you a lot. Yeah, roofs will get heavy with ash, hard and heavy, especially if there's any rain, such as the Seattle area has. They get a lot of moisture. When one of these volcanoes goes off, ash will be on people's roofs unless they're constantly up there with brooms pushing the ash off the roofs. If the ash hardens with all this water or moisture, it becomes like concrete. And as a result, that ash turns into concrete and becomes very heavy, and the roofs are going to collapse. Roofs to homes and businesses will collapse. Yes, Richard, everyone needs to prepare like their lives depend on, because that's exactly right. They are dependent on you surviving what's going on. That's why we have this channel, guys. That's why Emergency Management Associate exists. We talk about emergencies, we talk about disasters, We'd have discussions just like we've had today. I bring out the information for you so you're aware of it, so you can make emergency preparedness plans for yourselves and your families. That's why we do what we do. Yes, surgery, masks do help and do both of those same things at the same time. Richard Smith says humans once knew what it took to survive because back in the 1800s, living and existing was survival. They knew how to survive. They were prepared for anything. But now we've got to be panty waists. Excuse my French, we've got to be panty waists. We don't know much of anything anymore because we got lazy. We need to stop being lazy and get real with our life. Okay? Faith and Truth is saying that yes, some of this ash will get to be like glass. As we've talked about the ash fall and the volcanic eruptions in Hawaii, there's such thing called Paley glass or Paley's glass. Okay? When the volcano erupts, the cooling of the ash, it turns the ash into glass in some cases. If you inhale these particles of glass, it'll rip up your respiratory system and you're going to die. If you get that ash on your flesh, on your arms and legs, your face, and you try to brush it off, you're going to cut yourself up. You need to wear long sleeve clothes and also gloves. You need to have face protection to cover your face and eyes. You need to have goggles on your eyes. You need to have a mask over your face and mouth, to protect your lungs, protect your nose, protect your mouth. Okay? Shirley is saying the average person doesn't know herbology. Nobody's going to have access to stores, medicines, pharmacies, no groceries, no nothing. Nothing. This area where these volcanoes are going to be erupting will shut down stores, all kinds of things. You will not have access to anything anymore. Okay? Anyway, guys, I have prepared a little devotional for you tonight. Again, this devotional comes from Colossians. Now, I have spent a great deal of time in Colossians as of late. We need to put on the full armor of God. We need to be ready for whatever happens. We need to protect ourselves and our families. We need to be able to protect ourselves and our families in any way we possibly can. Here in Colossians, in chapter 3, starting with verse 12. Put on therefore as the elect of God, holy and beloved, bowels of mercy, kindness, humbleness of mind, meekness, long-suffering, forbearing one another, and forgiving one another. If any man have a quarrel against anyone, even as Christ forgave you, so also do ye. And above all things, put on charity, which is the bond of perfectness. And let the peace of God rule in your hearts, to the which also ye are called in one body. and be ye thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell in you richly in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms and hymns, spiritual songs, singing with grace in your hearts to the Lord. And whatsoever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks to God and the Father by him. That's what we need to be doing. Putting on the full armor of God, being able to protect ourselves and our families and those that we consider love towards. Protect yourselves. We need to pull together. Anne says we need to pull together. She's right. We need to do that. Brothers and sisters, I love you. I care about you. If I didn't care, I would not be here. If I did not care, I would not be here. Plain and simple. I want to be able to arm you with the information you need to survive what's going on. It's critical. It's critical. I hope you have a good night, everybody. Be safe. Be safe in whatever you do, wherever you go. Keep an eye on each member of your family. Do so lovingly, but keep an eye on them nonetheless. I wish you the best. I ask the Lord to bless you. Ask the Lord to bless you and keep you. God be with you until we meet again. If anything else happens tonight, we'll be back on the air to talk about it as soon as the information becomes available. We will be back on the air about 10 a.m. tomorrow, sometime after 10 a.m. with our membership meeting here on Emergency Management Associates. Until then, guys, we'll be back here at 6 p.m., or actually 4 p.m. tomorrow evening with more epistles or letters from the Emergency Management Associates. Have a good night, all. We love you very much. See you then.